Good morning, everyone. Ben Woodward, my friend. Wow, I'm personal friends with an author. How about that? So, adding to your title of many different things, I've always just been impressed with just the goodness of your heart and soul, but also, wow, what a guy! Such a young man to have been an ecclesiastical leader, a leader of billion-dollar companies, an advisor to business, a gifted speaker, an awesome dad and husband. You've done a lot of stuff, a lot of volunteer work, helping with addiction recovery and other passions that you have. And now you've got a book, and I'll just show this here. And thank you for the personal little thoughts there. Empowerment, that's an awesome word. Paradox, that's an interesting word also. So empowerment, what would be a paradox about empowerment?
Yeah, thank you. Well, yeah, the concept of the book is really founded on a principle that I think most of us understand, but unfortunately many of us try to avoid. And that is the duality of joy and suffering, that they coexist, that we need both in life. And they are a kind of a yin-yang thing, aren't they? They're kind of opposites, but they pull at each other, but they are essentially two sides of the same coin. And so that's the paradox right there, is the fact that they need to coexist. We need both of them in our lives, especially if we're wanting to achieve a sense of fulfillment and purpose. You know, many times, I think I've certainly seen it a lot, and I'm sure many of you have as well. When you're asked to consider your ideal state, you know, in a motivational kind of dream building exercise routine that many of us have gone through, someone saying, you know, kind of look ahead. You know, what does your future ideal self look like? What do your circumstances look like? And many of us will craft an image that is like some type of emotional homeostasis, yeah, where there is no friction. We've got the perfect work-life balance. Our physical health is tip-top shape. Our finances are just where we want them to be, maybe even a little nicer. Our relationships are all great and wonderful, and everything is rosy in the garden. And in fact, probably all the roses in the garden don't have any thorns. You know, that's kind of just to make it that little bit nicer. And that's kind of what we imagine and create for ourselves. But the reality is that doesn't actually exist, does it?
Well, we still aspire to that, and that I like all of those things you're saying, and so
yeah, and it's nice to aspire to. We want to have it, but in order to get it, there is friction that needs to be experienced in order for it to be realized. We have gravity that keeps us grounded on this planet, yeah, and it kind of is a weight-bearing thing to us, but we also need it in order to grow and to be strong. So
I just got to say something right there, because I've been on Earth a while and looked around and met a lot of people that seem to have it together, and they do have a good life, all of those things. But on the other hand, in visiting with them, some of the happiest moments, some of the real growth that they had, and the things that they look back with just a lot of fondness, was actually in that struggle to get there. And it was only through that struggle that they were able to gain that, and more important, appreciate it. Because if things are sweet, what does that even mean if you haven't tasted bitter? So that's some
yeah
things.
yeah and that's the interesting thing is yeah, the flavor that adversity gives to the joy. Yeah, if what we don't want to do is compartmentalize and say, okay, so what you're saying is that suffering is an essential aspect of reality, so I need to expect and appreciate that my life is all about morbid kind of endurance of the tough stuff.
I don't want to go chase it either. We don't want to, hey, Lord, I'd like to have some problems so I can grow. I don't think too many people do that. However, a lot of times to grow, there has to, if you want stronger muscles, you have to have opposition to push those muscles against.
Yeah, exactly. So we want to get the balance right in our perspective and understanding its role. in knowing that it exists. And that's really the essence of the first part of the book is, look, time heals all wounds, but it also seems to wound all heels. Yeah, if you can wrap your head around that a little bit. I'm talking about the heels of our feet, yeah? Meaning everyone kind of gets wounded in some way on our journey through life. Again, we don't want to seek it out, and nor do we need to suggest that that is what life is all about exclusively, because that's only one part of the paradox. Yeah, that's one part of the equation. The other part is the joy. And interestingly, when we respond to it well, that suffering, that adversity can season joy in a way that it enriches it and gives it depth and gives it a greater sense of appreciation and value, which makes our life more meaningful. And that's again the additional part of the paradox, is that for many, the purpose for being, our reason for being, can often be found when we joyfully arrive through that journey of adversity. Yeah. And so, I found, I kind of allude to this in the book perhaps, is that, my suffering isn't necessarily about me. That's one of my discoveries, yeah, is when we respond well to it, when we apply the virtues that I talk about in the book, what we certainly come to understand is that my adversity, maybe what I'm going through right now, isn't just all about me. I've had a tendency, and I think many people do, if we are going through something that's difficult, we tend to self-isolate and keep it private. We don't want other people to know I'm struggling. Yeah, so I'll keep it to myself. I won't say anything, and I'll put on this facade so I look brave and strong on the outside, but inside I'm really finding it hard. But if we can get past that and be brave enough to talk about what we're struggling with, then what we might actually find is other people go, yeah, me too. And in the process, if we've responded well and we've done good with it and we've learned from it, then we can actually help someone. And that can be a great gift. And then all of a sudden, when you're helping other people with their struggles, you go, maybe that's what mine was all about. Maybe my lesson, my value here is to help others. And then all of a sudden, my struggle has meaning. And then it isn't so much of a struggle anymore. Maybe it's not so painful now because I know it means something.
Well, that's a question that someone is asking you, is how did you come to write this book? What caused it? And I think you maybe answered that right there. Is
well, yeah. Let me tell
help others.
Yeah. Let me tell a story on that, because for a start, as I sat down to write it, I wrestled with one particular subject, and that was, how vulnerable do I need to get as the writer in talking about my own personal struggles? Because if I'm going to talk about turning struggle into strength, then I need to be a little personal there if I'm going to be a writer. Yeah, and give context to say, trust me, I know what I'm talking about. Yeah, otherwise, why should you trust what you're reading? Yeah, if I'm just giving you stuff to read about, well, based on your own experience or just based on theory, philosophy, concept, it has more weight and merit if I can say, this is my journey with suffering. So I needed to be a bit vulnerable there, and my worry was how much, and because for those of you that read it, you'll see there's certainly things in there that I tell you about me that I have never told before, and that was a big step. So how did I come about doing that? I had some friends of mine in England a couple of years back that asked me to come and speak at one of their meetings. They were having like a weekend workshop with a group of people, and they asked if I would come along and be a guest speaker. And so I did, and I had 2 speaking slots. And it was interesting because I was billed as the successful outsider, that was coming, because I was the guest speaker. So, it was all about entrepreneurship, and it was all about achieving success and all that kind of stuff. And they had this beautiful location in this big manor house in the south of England for the weekend. And so the first part, on day one, I was talking about the journey to success, what it looks like, and what it feels like, and kind of giving them some type of ideal to aspire towards. Yeah. And kind of share some of the good things that come from being a successful entrepreneur. And it was kind of aspirational stuff. The second day was, what are some of the barriers? How do you deal with the tough stuff? Because it's not always easy. It's actually also hard. How do you deal with that stuff? And I remember sitting there on the night before going, should I, shouldn't I? Should I, shouldn't I? Share with them some of the tough stuff that I've worked through. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to do this as an experiment. I've never done it with my Nikken team and getting vulnerable and personal to this level because I was too nervous to. And I thought, I'm going to do it with this group because chances are I'm never going to see them again. Right? So I've got nothing to lose, right? I think it'll go well in regards to my message, but if I lose something, maybe if they didn't like the story that I told, if it was too personal, if they didn't relate or what have you, if it was too much, then I've got nothing to lose because it's not my Nikken team. So I kind of tested the waters. And so I said, well, I've got something of a superpower here, in regards to dealing with the tough stuff, an advantage perhaps that you guys don't. And then I shared with them my struggles and what I'd really suffered with in very deep, quiet, personal isolation. And I think you could have heard a pin drop. Yeah, it went real quiet. And I went through the story, and I then explained what I'd learned from it. And what was fascinating was afterwards, I had never had such a huge response coming back after a speaking assignment. People had tears in their eyes, lumps in their throat. They were inspired, they were motivated, they were encouraged. And I had more people in that group reach out and want to connect with me online. And still have stayed in connection with me online as a result of that experience. And everyone has different struggles, different adversity. But that suddenly I realized, in spite of it being unique to me, actually resonated with a lot of people in regards to its lessons. So that gave me, going back to Elaine's question, that gave me the courage to go, okay, let's give this a go. And at first, candidly, I was expecting the audience to be outside of my Nikken group primarily as well. That kind of actually, I thought I'll just do this as a separate thing. Yeah, I'm going to write a book. It's been a passion project of mine, and it'll go out to a different audience. Yeah, because it's not a network marketing book, but if you read it, of course, you certainly see that it is a humans being more book, because that's really the essence of it. But turns out that by the time I finished, I was kind of proud of what it had become, and I wanted to share it anyway. So now it's out to everyone. So,
well, that's fascinating stuff. I think about just adversity and challenges, and all the people I've met that I've and there is some people, and I guess you could put it in these words I've heard best, that you can either get bitter or you can get better, but you can't do both. And I have met people that have become bitter, but most of the people I've met, they look back at that to the point where they say, if somehow the good Lord came to them and said, let's go back to that time when you had that accident or that diagnosis or the catastrophe or whatever happened to you, and we'll just have that not happen. And then you can go on to another world without all of those challenges, and it'll be a lot easier for you. But with that, you are going to forfeit the relationships you've made, the strengths that you've had, the experiences, all of the good that you've been able to benefit with that. And those people have actually said, hey, that was actually a defining moment that made me who I am, and not even a consideration. I'll take that pain and suffering and challenge along with the blessings. And it almost seems like that whenever God gives us a blessing, it comes in a package. that's adversity or challenge on the outside. And
Yeah.
I always think about that if somehow the world was made where everything was easy, that would kind of like what you talk about, having a kid, as soon as they come out, they walk over to the refrigerator and get a drink. They don't need doctors. They just go to the bathroom by themselves. That is be so much easier. And then, of course, we love our children. We don't want them to suffer. So let's not even let them walk, because they're going to fall down. So we'll just carry them wherever they go. And we could really cripple somebody really bad if we prevented any challenges to happen. And
that's the interesting thing, because there's this virtue cycle that's been taught for probably at least a couple of thousand years, but which is, adversity leads to patience, patience leads to experience, and experience leads to hope. Yeah. And that's interesting, because what that's suggesting is typically people will feel a great sense of hope before they experience the adversity. Yeah, if you're building a business, for example, at the front end of it, you're full of hopes and dreams because you haven't had any of the experience that teaches you it's harder than you expected. Yeah, so you got all the hopes and dreams, but then you get real life experience hits you and you go, oh, this is harder than I thought. So how is it that tough stuff, where you get the knockbacks, where people say no, where people knock you down, where you realize, actually, I've got some skills that are missing that I thought I already had. Turns out I don't. I've got a learning curve to go on now, or this is going to take longer than I planned, or whatever it may be. That's all part of the process. But this cycle goes adversity, experience, patience, experience, hope, meaning that at the end of it, I've got a greater sense of hope than I had at the beginning. A greater sense. And yet the antithesis is often true, isn't it? For some people, adversity leads to impatience, and impatience leads to bad experience, and bad experience leads them to a state of hopelessness. And it's like, well, so what's the difference? If someone can have bad experience and end up being hopeless, have suffering or adversity, and then get to a point where they feel hopeless as a consequence. But others can have bad experience and adversity, adversity, and it leads to a hopeful state. What's the difference? And it really, well, it begins right there with their ability to exercise patience, which is one of the virtues. But that's the critical thing. We can go in either way, depending on how we choose to respond to the adversity when it comes. Am I going to be patient with it and endure it well? Or am I going to be impatient and then badly endure it and then end up in a state of hopelessness and despair? Because that's where it leads. Yeah, so the reality is if we apply these virtues of disciplining and training our desires, of getting educated, getting smart, leveling up our education, exercising our faith when we don't have all the information, when we don't have all the facts, what do we do? Because yes, it's important to be smart and educated to understand what you're working with, but critically, what's important is that we are willing to go, and even if I don't have all the facts, I'm going to take a leap into the dark and exercise my faith as well. And then be patient in that process. Really, really important there. I can see Madeline's just posted a comment. Give me 1 second.
She's kind of agreeing with everything you said.
Yeah. Okay.
Succinctly, I like what John Maxwell says: life is uphill.
yeah, it is. But the critical thing is, like I said, I want to get the balance right in the message here. The book isn't really all about suffering and adversity. It's really about victory and strength and becoming the best version of ourselves. The first section gives an appropriate nod to the role of adversity and suffering in life, gives some context to it and some meaning. But as we go into the 7 virtues, that aspect is really designed to explain, look, it's going to come to all of us, but the critical thing is we get the balance with that yin and yang. Yeah, let's get it right. because what we want to have is a rich sense of joy, a rich sense of purpose, an overwhelming sense of meaning, and a sense of self-empowerment that gives us a chance to, in a bright and glorious way, strengthen the collective, not just ourselves. And that kind of brings us a little bit, I don't want to give the conclusion away, but that's kind of where I lead towards the end, is ultimately my life is not about me. If I want to have a great one, if I want my life to be full of meaning and purpose and value and be truly happy and joyful and rich and abundant, it's not about the stuff that we get or acquire. It's not about the titles that we achieve. That stuff is all nice. It's not about the prestige, the respect or value that we get given back to us. That all that stuff is nice, but it's not what really makes life valuable. The rich, joyful, abundant sense of meaning, value, and purpose that we all want to have is found when we are truly connected with others, and we are doing that in a meaningful, contributing, value-adding way. When my life is not about me, and often that also comes to mean, in many instances, that my struggles, my trials, are not about me either. Yeah, and that to me is one of the paradoxes, because for a long time I did struggle in isolation or in privacy, and when I did start to shift that, I found that actually there was greater value in it, and all of a sudden it had meaning. Yeah, so I think that's really important. That the collective, the team, the network, and that's what I love about Nikken so much. Is we talk about this global wellness community, this sense of true community, of belonging together, isn't just about having a shared purpose of improving people's well-being. It's also a sense of shared purpose in being there for each other and helping each other out, and providing strength for each other, lifting each other up when someone's down. So we all need to be each other's greatest cheerleaders. If someone's struggling, we need to all be there to help them along the way. When we do that, can you imagine the strength of the network when we have that type of love and investment in each other, where we can openly, candidly, humbly express, I struggle here or I struggle there, and the others around us go, I get it, I've been there. We talk about feel, felt, found, don't we, in resolving people's concerns when we're prospecting. Oh, I'm not sure if that business is for me. Oh, I understand how you feel. When I was first looking at that, I felt the same way. But what I found is, we kind of go through that with prospects, and we've taught that so much. But really, we need to be doing that feel, felt, found with each of us all the time along our own journey throughout life. And that's where I think the great, rich abundance of living comes in. My life is not about me. Your life is not about you. Your victories are not about you. My victories are not about me. Your struggles are not about you either. It's all about the collective. And that's where the sense of empowerment is actually amplified. The virtues, again, the 7 virtues take us to a place where we can be self-empowered to respond to tough stuff and find meaning, find purpose, and find strength. But when we understand that, a real aspect of this is the intertwining of each other and the binding of us all together, then that self-empowerment that we all feel when we're bound together is amplified. And our strength as a collective is just multiplied. And then what we can achieve is something at a different level that we haven't experienced. And I'd love to see that happen in Nikken, that sense of becoming more at a collective level where we're all helping each other to thrive and grow and prosper. Boy, I think what we could achieve then would be phenomenal.
This is good stuff. There's a book I read, and inside the book, there's a little card that you could put on your wall, and I have it there. And it says, I am the one, and it's not about me, which is a seeming paradox. But the book really talks about how one person can have such an impact, such a wonderful influence, but especially if you're thinking of the team and what you can do in serving other people. And so other people will be thinking, well, it's you do have that thought it's really not about me. And yet on the other hand, you're thinking that, wow, if I can do something and then the wonderful feeling that something is wonderful done that wouldn't have happened but by you and your good influence, which is a really wonderful way to live, being inside Nikken, doing that, having the empowerment to have products and the way to build a team where you can multiply that influence, so it's not all about you, and yet it would have happened but by you. And so kind of a fun play back and forth on that.
Yeah, well, I think as well, I do believe we need to start evaluating how we present the opportunity moving forward. Yeah, I mentioned this on Jeff's Entrepreneurs Being More call on Wednesday. I do think we need to evaluate that a little bit, because the world is evolving and the language that they are using is changing. What they're looking for is different now. And therefore we need to shape our message a little bit to be that little bit more contemporary and relevant. And at the heart of this, when you run your own home-based business, yes, we're all a part of Nikken, but at the same time, we're all business owners. It's all our businesses. And when we reach out to others and connect with them, we want to make sure that we connect on an intimate way, in a personal way. That's what great brands all do, yeah? Like Simon Sinek said, like I referenced on Wednesday, people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And I think if we're willing to make our own brand that little bit more authentic and lean in to maybe some of the unique aspects of our lives that have truly pulled us in to Nikken and that have truly kept us here, if we're willing to tap into that, that would be interesting. I was at an event a little while ago in LA, and Gary Vaynerchuk was there, and he said something really interesting. He said, to build an online business, he said, you really got to be willing to be exposed and to be vulnerable, right? He says, and he said, and there was probably maybe a couple of thousand people in the audience. He said, and he said, a lot of you don't get to, you don't write enough content out there online and your social media platforms to do a great job. He says, you're just not putting the content out there. He says, but I'll tell you why you're doing that. That's a brave thing to say to 2,000 people. I'll tell you why you're not doing that one thing. He said, because you're afraid that he says, there's one thing in your life that you don't want people knowing about you. He says, and you're afraid that if you get vulnerable and you start talking out there online, that someone might discover it. He said, so you don't do it. You don't put the content out. He said, and that's a big thing to say, isn't it? There's something about you that you don't want people knowing. And so you don't share the content. And he said that to 2,000 people, and you could have, again, heard a pin drop. No one challenged them. They were all going, yeah. We've all got something about us that maybe we don't like, that maybe scares us a little bit, that if someone found out, they wouldn't like us as much, they wouldn't love us as much. That makes me feel vulnerable or scared. He says, but that's the thing. You've got to be willing to share. You've got to be willing to be vulnerable. So it's interesting to consider. I wonder how much of that, I'm not suggesting we share our deep, dark secrets with everyone and neglect the sacredness of certain experiences or aspects of our lives. Because, we don't want to cast our pearls before swine, so to speak. Yeah. But there is a balance to be had there where we respect the pearls, but also understand the value of those unique aspects that have shaped us into who we are. Yeah. But maybe we've kept it a little private, because I do think that there are some of us that go, I've joined Nikken because of this, or I'm still here because of this. HBM resonates with me more than anything because of this one thing. Because the reality is, as I've looked at my struggles, there's been so many times, and I'll share this candidly here today, where when I've been on stage speaking, I've been talking to myself. I've been talking to the audience, but primarily I've been teaching myself. And Kim's been at the back of the room, and she's gone, that was great what you said, Ben. I sure wish you'd listen to yourself. Yeah. And I'm like, I know, Kim, I know. I was saying that to me. Yeah, I was talking to myself. And it's one of the reasons why sometimes I've gotten a little emotional as I've spoken, because it's been so raw for me, that particular subject or issue, because I've been talking direct back to me. Yeah. I think we can do a little bit more of that as a team. Is why does humans being more really resonate? You know, what aspect of your life does it really connect with that does make you go, I desperately need this. I desperately want this. And why does that keep you so anchored and so connected? Is there that one thing that you haven't spoken about yet, that you haven't really opened up on, that you go, yeah, this is why it means so much to me, because it resonates at this deep personal level. I think that's where the brand has its chops. That's where it has its strength. And maybe that's where, as you reach out to others, you can say, you start to make a real personal difference. Because I think we can lead with our business in our prospecting activities with the humans being more message. That's what it's all about. That's what it's all for. The business model is really a vehicle that helps us to become more, because it takes us out of our comfort zone. It puts our commitment to our dreams to the test. It is sometimes unpleasant and difficult to talk to a lot of people, to discipline ourselves to do things in our spare time versus our primary time. You know, we've got to sacrifice, we've got to feel the burn, we've got to get the rejection, we've got to learn new skills, we've got to push uphill. That's all part of the model, but that's all part of business as well, isn't it? But if we're leading with the humans being more spirit, and if we're anchored truly in that, and if we're vulnerable enough with each other to say, I'm really committed to this humans being more thing, I want to become my best self more than anything, because, and this is a vehicle to help me do that, then I think it'll give us greater strength and an ability to not just get there ourselves, but also help each other along the way. And maybe in that process, we could attract more people, because everyone's got that one thing, haven't they? That one thing that maybe bites at them a little bit.
I think that's kind of the overall theme of your book is
Mm.
you want people to become their best self.
Yeah.
And that's in line with, I believe, ultimately why we are here. I think that's the greatest gift we can give the world to, you know, our purpose is to serve others. And the way to do that is to be our very best self, be our most positive, influential, and all of those things. And I think having a book like this, probably one of the most important statements I heard when I was in my 20s that really got kind of an aha moment was this guy just said, where you will be in 5 years depends on the books you read, the people you associate with, the things that you listen to, you know, what you watch. Because we do, I think about this, we do become what we think about, and we can direct our lives by directing our thoughts. And if we think the same thing over and over again, it becomes more permanent and deeper and becomes us. And so when we're reading something good, it comes into us. And that's one of the big things that it seems like all of the prominent people said, well, I think is just leaders are readers.
Yeah.
And that's a big thing. And we can direct our lives by directing our thoughts. And so read every day. This is a good book to read. And humans being more, that's the real product that we have as human beings, realizing their greatest potential. And maybe just one other thought, this association, I got to have you tell one of my very favorite ahas that you shared when you were with a leader in another business and there was thousands of people, and you asked him what the secret was. Maybe put that in somewhere in your closing remarks too.
Sure. Yeah. So I was with a leader in the UK who, in my opinion, was probably the best network marketer, not just in the company, but in the industry in the United Kingdom. And I say that based on results. Yeah. He would put together team meetings that would have 30 to 40,000 people coming to his events 3 times a year. 3 times a year, 30 to 40,000. And that was just for the UK, right? And that's not America, which is, you know, the land of dreams, which has, people migrate, immigrate to America. Why? Because, you know, they want the American dream. Yeah. I'm not sure if there is a great British dream. I've not heard of it. Right.
Come to America.
Go to America. That's what I've done. I don't want to offend any of the Brits on the call. I'm sure there are dreams, but America certainly is known for it, isn't it? You know, to be dreamers, and it's created more millionaires than any other country, I believe. But in regards to financial dreams, perhaps. But yes, I was talking to him one day because he's a good friend of mine. I said, what's the key to getting this kind of out? That outcome is just phenomenal. You know, what's the key to building a real great team or building a great business in network marketing? And what I liked was his answer. He didn't kind of lean back in his chair and go, let me think. The answer came without a hesitation. He already knew it. It was so built into what he does because he knew the answer so well. So without batting an eyelid, without hesitating, he said, the key to building a great business is creating a club that people want to belong to. That's what it's all about. Create a club that people want to belong to. And he was a master of that. He did a great job of it. And that's, I think, you know, what we've got here with Nikan is we've got a team that, you know, I love belonging to without a doubt. One of my greatest senses of pride as I look at my associations is with my affinity and my association with Nikan and the people in it. It's the people that I love so much. And I just want to serve them, help them to succeed, help them to thrive, and help them to grow and just have a wonderful experience together at being more. And but I do think we can get better. There's always ways I think that we can improve in this community to make it something even richer and more rewarding. We've got to find those ways as well to get it better. But that's the secret. I think that's where the answers lie, is creating that community.
Well, thank you, Ben. I believe anybody that reads that book, they'll be better for it. Some great ideas, and this paradox of adversity, it really is a blessing. In fact, just one thing I thought about when I was reading that and kind of what's going on today is I think so many people just don't appreciate because they haven't had adversity. And one of the things that's just really stuck in my mind that I think about today with, you know, Marxism kind of making a comeback and socialism is I had a friend talking about how in his town, he was always just really wondering about this nice home on a hill. And one day he thought, I'm just going to go up and meet that person, see who they were. And he found out it was a Russian immigrant. And he just, in visiting and everything, he says, why are you so successful? And he says, well, Americans don't appreciate. He says, Alex appreciates. And people that are immigrants to America, they're twice as likely to become wealthy than somebody that's born here. And I think that's the big thing. And particularly people who have lived in oppression, the Russians are more likely than any other category of immigrants to become wealthy. And there's a whole bunch of Russians in the Spokane area where I live. And I just think, wow, a lot of people, we've kind of, a lot of the new generation, they've lived with so much comfort, they don't really appreciate what is around. And wow, if we can teach people free enterprise by having a business of their own, appreciate health by showing them different things, we could change the world with the ideas that we have. And so, wow, let's be engines of free enterprise and commerce and possibilities. But
yeah, excellent. Thank you. It's I think the possibilities are endless. And I just wanted to knowledge, Madeline just quickly said a point here, which I think is worth recognizing. The others versus Me Too movement. I think the focus on others, I think, is really important, isn't it? It's, what this is ultimately all about is not me. That in itself, I don't want to kind of labor that word paradox too much, but just really quickly in conclusion, it's never about us. It's always about others. That's the profound, obscure paradox. If we can make ourselves irrelevant in a healthy, loving way, in the sense of we make others front and center, they go first, then I think we can make a profound impact for good.
Mental health, happiness, all this kind of stuff is being outwardly focused. If you're focusing on yourself, it really messes up your mind.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Another paradox.
It does.
All right. Hey, love you all. Ben, thanks. So glad you're my friend, and thank you for the gift of this wonderful book. You're going to be able to reach a lot of people. I know it's going to be an international bestseller.
That would be great. That would be great. Thank you all very much.
Okay. Take care. Thanks.